As a rule nowadays we are aiming to conversation around astounding thing that you just didn't know. Almost a century motion pictures called Titanic, a 17-year-old noble falls in cherish with a kind but destitute craftsman on board the lavish, ill-fated RMS Titanic. 84 A long time afterward, a 100-year-old lady named Rose DeWitt Bacata tells the story to her granddaughter Lizzie Calvert, Brock Lovett, Louis Bodine, Bobby Buell and Anatoly Mikhailovich on the Keldysh. Approximately her life set in April 10, 1912, on a dispatch called Titanic when youthful Rose sheets the leaving dispatch with the upper-class travelers and her mother, Ruth DeWitt Bacata, and her fiancé, Caledon Hockley. In the interim, a vagabond and craftsman named Jack Dawson and his best friend Fabrizio de Rossi win third-class tickets to the transport in a diversion. And she clarifies the total story from flight until the passing of Titanic on its to begin with and final voyage April 15, 1912 at 2:20 within the morning. After winning a trip on the RMS Titanic amid a dockside card diversion, American Jack Dawson spots the society young lady Rose DeWitt Bacata, who is on her way to Philadelphia to wed her wealthy big-talker fiancé Caledon Hockley. Rose feels weakly caught by her circumstance and makes her way toward the back deck and considers of suicide until she is protected by Jack. Cal is hence obliged to welcome Jack to feast at their first-class table where he endures through the insults of his pretentious has. In return, he spirits Rose off to third class for an evening of moving, giving her the time of her life. Deciding to spurn her expecting future altogether, Rose inquires Jack, who has made his living making draws on the lanes of Paris, to draw her within the bear wearing the important blue precious stone Cal has given her. Cal finds out and has Jack bolted absent. Before long, a short time later, the transport hits an ice sheet and Rose must discover Jack, whereas both must run from Cal. Indeed, as the transport sinks more profound into the solidifying water. Profound at the foot of the ocean, a few 3,800 meters underneath the surface of the solidifying Atlantic Sea, lies the destruction of a transport presently stripped of its previous radiance. It is the unmistakable carcass of the Titanic, once man's most amazing mechanical accomplishment. Nearly 1 century afterward, present-day treasure seeker Brock Lovett and his team burrow for answers, captivated by the sealiner's depressed covered-up wealth. But when energetic centenarian Rose Calvert, one of Titanic's few survivors, learns almost the driven campaign, the ship's never-before-heard story unfurls. And as the white-haired visitor takes an enthusiastic trip down memory path, Rose intertwines the destiny of ruler Louis XVI's wonderful Heart of the Ocean duel with her energetic sentiment on board the ill-fated Titanic. In any case, history gives answers as it were to those who know how to inquire questions. Is Lovett on the skirt of making an uncommon disclosure? In 1996, treasure seeker Brock Lovett, Charge Paxton, and his group on board the investigate vessel Keldysh look the wreck of RMS Titanic for a necklace with her uncommon jewel, the Heart of the Sea. They recuperate a secure containing a drawing of a youthful lady wearing as it were the accessory. It is dated April 14, 1912, the day the transport struck the ice sheet. Rose Dawson Calvert, Gloria Stewart, claiming to be the individual within the drawing, visits Lovett and tells of her encounters on board the transport. In 1912 Southampton, 17-year-old first-class traveller Rose DeWitt Bacata, Kate Winslet, her fiancé Cal Hockley, Billy Zane, and her mother Ruth Frances Fisher, board the Titanic. Moreover, boarding the transport at Southampton are Jack Dawson, Leonardo DiCaprio, a down-on-his-luck portrait craftsman, and his Italian companion Fabrizio, Danny Nucci. Youthful Rose, irate and troubled that her mother has clearly orchestrated the marriage, considers committing suicide by jumping from the strict. Jack oversees to drag her back over the rail after she loses her balance and about falls into the propellers. Found with Jack, Rose tells Cal that she was peering over the edge and Jack spared her from falling. Cal is uninterested, but when Rose demonstrates a few acknowledgement is due, he offers Jack a little sum of cash. After Rose inquires whether sparing her life implied so small, he welcomes Jack to eat with them in to begin with class. The following night, in conjunction with a few unmistakable first-class travelers, counting the Lady of Rothes, Archibald Gracie, Bernard Fox, Thomas Andrews, Victor Garber, Molly Brown, Kathy Bates, and John Jacob Astor, Eric Braden, and his spouse. Jack and Rose create a provisional companionship, in spite of the fact that Cal and Ruth are attentive of him. Taking after supper, Rose subtly joins Jack at a party in third course. During the party, Cal's butler, Spicer Lovejoy, David Warner, stealthily sneaks down the third course staircase to spy on her. After an awfully tense breakfast, the taking after morning, in which Cal appears and slants towards savagery, Rose gets to be indeed more anxious, almost her up-and-coming marriage. Ruth emphasizes that Rose's marriage will resolve the DeWitt Bacata's monetary issues. After spotting Rose, Cal and Ruth out on the vessel deck, Jack stealthily sneaks back into to begin with lesson and tries to caution Rose almost what she may be confronting. Rose rebukes Jack's progresses, but afterward realizes that she lean towards him over Cal. After assembly on the bow at nightfall, Rose takes Jack to her stateroom and shows Cal's engagement display, The Heart of the Sea. At her ask, Jack portrays Rose posturing naked wearing it. In the meantime, within the first-class smoking room, Cal's butler educates him that none of the stewards have seen Rose at all that night. Cal orders the butler to discover her. Rose and Jack oversee to avoid Cal's bodyguard and have sex in an automobile interior, the cargo hold. They afterward visit the forward well deck, and whereas on it, the posts spot a chunk of ice straightforwardly within the ship's way, orders are given to turn the dispatch difficult a starboard and run the motors full toward the back, but the transport takes as well long to make. The turn and the starboard side rub along the chunk of ice, causing substantial damage to the watertight compartments, counting the cargo hold where Jack and Rose had been having sex within the car. Jack and Rose witness the collision with the ice sheet and catch the officers and creator examining its seriousness. On the bridge, builder Thomas Andrews, Captain Smith, Bernard Slope, the ship's officers, and White Star Line overseeing Chief Bruce Ismay, Jonathan Hyde, examine the harm. The water has come to 14 feet over the bottom in 10 minutes and has overflowed 5 watertight compartments. Mr. Andrews cautions that since of a plan blemish, the water will spill over the tops of the bulkheads at E-deck, and this will cause the transport to sink. He gives an hour, 2 at most, for the dispatch to stay above water. Cal finds Jack's portrait of Rose and a deriding note from her in his safe in conjunction with the jewelry. When Jack and Rose endeavor to tell Cal of the collision, he has his butler slip the jewelry into Jack's take and charges him of robbery. He is captured, taken to the master-at-arms office, and bound to a pipe. Cal puts the accessory in his own coat pocket. With the transport sinking, Rose is frantic to free Jack. She escapes Cal and her mother, who has boarded a raft, and salvages him. They return to the watercraft deck, where Cal and Jack empower her to board a raft. Cal claims he can get himself and Jack off securely. After Rose sheets one, Cal tells Jack the course of action is as it were for himself. As her watercraft brings down, Rose chooses that she cannot leave Jack and hops back on board. Jack confronts her furiously to begin with, but his irritates before long turns to love and they share a arrangement of kisses at the foot of the amazing staircase. Cal, seeing this, takes his butler's gun and chases Rose and Jack into the flooding to begin with lesson-eating cantina. After utilizing up his ammo, Cal realizes he gave his coat and subsequently the accessory to Rose. Jack and Rose are constrained to escape underneath decks to elude Cal, and barely elude suffocating themselves. They ended up caught behind a bolted door, but Jack oversees to free them fair as the rising water comes to their heads. Out on the pontoon deck, Cal chooses to create his possess elude. He reminds the primary officer of the course of action made prior, but the officer furiously turns on Cal and denies to permit him boarding. When he spots a misplaced child stowing away behind a winch, he takes the child and is in this way permitted into a collapsible raft by Chief Officer Wilde. As Cal and others board the collapsible, the water surges into the bridge and wheelhouse, suffocating Captain E.J. Smith and causing Cal's vessel to begin drifting off the deck. By presently the Strict is gazing to rise out of the water and the remaining travelers are running more distant and more distant rearward. After braving a few impediments, Jack and Rose return to the vessel deck. All the lifeboats have departed and travelers are falling to their passings as the Strict rises out of the water. Water now crashes through the tremendous arch over the fantastic staircase, suffocating those travelers caught interior. Jack and Rose reach the exceptionally Strict, where they had to begin with met, and take up positions on it by climbing over the rail, another to Chief Bread Cook Charles Jochen. The dispatch breaks in half, causing the Strict to crash down into the water and slaughtering Lovejoy, the butler. As the bow breaks off, it pulls the Strict back into the Discuss, taking off it sitting there for a diminutive. Jack and Rose ride it into the sea because it fills with water and after that dives to the foot. As Jack and Rose let go of the Strict, the Titanic disappears into the obscurity underneath them, and they both swim to the surface to discover themselves in an enormous horde of passengers and team. Inside minutes, Rose and Jack discover a chunk of paneling from the terrific staircase, and he makes a difference her onto the wooden board, as it were buoyant sufficient for one individual. Holding the edge, he guarantees her that she will pass on an ancient lady, warm in her bed. He kicks the bucket of hypothermia but she is spared when Fifth Officer Lowe and a few crew members return to undertake to discover survivors. With Rose covering up from Calais course, the RMS Carpathia takes the survivors to unused York. There she gives her title as Rose Dawson. She afterward learns that Cal committed suicide after losing everything within the 1929 Divider road crash. Lovett abandons his look after hearing Rose's story. Alone on the Strait of the Keldysh, Rose takes out the heart of the sea, in her ownership all along, and drops it into the ocean over the wreck location. Whereas she is apparently sleeping in her bed, photographs on her dresser delineate a life of flexibility and enterprise, somewhat propelled by Jack. A youthful Rose returns to the transport, to begin with, a melancholy wreck on the foot, but as Rose comes to the promenade deck, the dispatch starts to shine with light. As she enters the amazing staircase, she is greeted by those who died on the dispatch, counting the Titanic's band, First Officer Murdoch, Thomas Andrews, Jack's companions Fabrizio and Tommy Ryan. And standing at the clock is Jack himself. He extends a hand and they rejoin, to the cheerful cheers of the died travelers and group. Let us halt here, we'll proceed another time, but keep in mind to subscribe for more overhauls on Emil Appear Official.